Yes.
I think we've become a society in general that cannot commit to things because we are inundated with instantaneous gratification, especially through social media.
Yes.
Right? So you can look at something and it takes 3 seconds to decide if you like that thing, or you can just keep scrolling.
Right.
And we've brought that into our relationships because relationships take time. They take time to cultivate. And marriages take even more effort, not just time, to cultivate and have a good marriage. You have to be very committed. And one of the things that I remember before I got married, my mother-in-law told me, I'll never forget this. She's such a wise woman. She said to me, listen, I know you love my son and he loves you, but let me tell you a secret. Welcome to the Womanhood Lectures, where each week we bring you topics and discussions around issues that matter to you, the modern day woman. We hope to inspire and enlighten you and hopefully bring up some healthy debate about issues that surround womanhood. I'm one of your hosts, Yasmin.
And I'm Lyra.
And we invite you to come curl up with us, take a seat at our table, grab your favorite drink, and let's chat.
You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, as well as Instagram. We would really like it if you liked and shared. But something new is that we'd love if you commented on our show. We know that there's some comments that we make or topics that we talk about that will trigger something inside of you where you'd like us to talk more about what you're thinking about. So with that, let's dive in. What's our topic for today?
So today we are talking about nothing special. It's called marriage.
Oh my gosh.
Marriage. Is it worth it?
Is it?
Is it really worth it? Talking between the two of us who've been married for almost 4 decades together.
Yes.
When you put all of those years together that we've both each been married, that's a long time to stay with one person.
It really is.
Are we done? Are we ready to move on to the next person? Has it been one of those weeks where you're like, I'm going to throw him out the window I'm ready. I can swipe left tomorrow. Really? No, I'm just kidding. But really, like, what do you find is your experience when you have those times in your marriage that are very trying for you?
So are you asking me if it's worth it?
I'm asking you if it's worth it.
So disclaimer here, for sure. I would say that most often I would like to strangle my husband. He's insufferable to some degree. But a lot of it is because we are 2 different people. We are 2 different people, 2 different expectations in life, 2 different belief systems, 2 different ways that we were raised. Our mothers are completely different. Our fathers are completely different. We've had a life before we had a life with each other that is not common. Like, we don't share commonalities. Do we share commonalities now? Yes, we kind of look to come together on those commonalities, but one of them being, and I think the strongest one, is our children. You know, we have 2 beautiful children that kind of keep us focused on our goals, and then we can come together and actually meet somewhere and be happy. What about you? Do you think it's worth it?
Me personally, yes,
Okay.
I do. I mean, I'm a romantic at heart, even though I'm very, very practical in my life. I've wanted to be married when I was younger. I didn't really imagine what it would be like to actually be in a marriage and raise children and all of that it entails. But I do think that it's worth it. I think for me as an individual, I have more stability in my life. I'm happier. I'm more settled.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of women feel that way, even with the times that they want to strangle their partners and throw them out the window. That was me in the last 48 hours. Absolutely. I was like, why don't you go out that door and don't stop walking, mister? And then, I come to my senses and I'm kind of like, all right, I will take a time. Yeah, I will take some time for myself. I obviously need some time to gather myself together.
Right.
Because those trying times are going to come up.
Yes.
Those times when there's socks and dirty underwear right beside the laundry basket. I'm talking
On the floor.
On the floor, right beside
I know.
the laundry basket.
Yes, triggering.
What is that?
I know.
Does everyone experience this?
I think so. I think it is a common thing. Like I find
It's
that when
those little things.
I find that when I speak to a lot of women in my life, it's, I'll tell a story and I'll be like, oh, he did this again. Really? Mine does that too. And I find that we share in that, like common things that are the differences between men and women, which I think we kind of spoke about that before in the past, like the role of men and then the role of women and how that's kind of just, kind of been a little bit washed. But yes, the opposite sex does drive us nuts, right? But that being said, I mean, we were here to talk about, is marriage worth it? Because marriage in itself is on the decline. So we're seeing that less women are getting married.
Less women are opting in, for sure.
That being said, I mean, when we grew up as children, it was something that we looked forward to. Like, we're like, oh, I'm going to, love and marriage, right? Like, we're going to get married. We're going to have children. We're going to have a family. We're going to get old. And then,
it was the natural
the legacy
step.
of our lives is going to be our grandchildren. I feel that that's kind of changed in society now, where we're not really looking at our legacies as much anymore. Does it?
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's really interesting. I think a lot of younger women have switched over or shifted their perspectives on what they want long-term for themselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes marriage isn't part of it. Not that they don't want to have relationships. I think a lot of women still want to have good relationships, but that institution of marriage,
yes,
is sort of looked down on now. Almost like it is something that's confining, something that's going to hold you back from living your best life. I love when people say, I'm just going to live my best life. Really? What does that actually mean? So it's really interesting because I do think that for a lot of women in their marriages, you can live your best life.
That is your best life.
You can live your best life with a person.
Exactly. You can have a partner who leaves his underwear and socks at the laundry basket, but then, you can cuddle up with him at night, and have some familiarities. Like I had this moment a couple of weeks ago where I was lying in bed, ready to go to sleep, and my kids just jumped on the bed. So it was like the four of us on our king bed, and I stopped for a moment. I'm like, this is life. This is love. This is life. This is togetherness. This is unity, right? But that being said, like when we're talking about marriages, I mean, in 1950, at least the stats are saying, 82% of the female population was married.
Okay, that would make sense.
Now, I mean, we're looking at 2000 stats, 62%. Ooh. Now, I know that's probably come down a little bit since then, but I mean, what does that say? Does it say that maybe there's less marriages, but there's still relationships or long-term relationships? Is common law kind of just becoming a thing now?
Could be. Could very well be. I think a lot of people are afraid of making commitments.
Yes.
I think we've become a society in general that cannot commit to things because we are inundated with instantaneous gratification, especially through social media.
Yes.
Right? So you can look at something and it takes 3 seconds to decide if you like that thing, or you can just keep scrolling.
Right.
And we've brought that into our relationships because relationships take time. They take time to cultivate. And marriages take even more effort, not just time, to cultivate and have a good marriage. You have to be very committed. And one of the things that I remember before I got married, my mother-in-law told me, I'll never forget this. She's such a wise woman. She said to me, listen, I know you love my son and he loves you, but let me tell you a secret. Love is not enough. And that really hit me. And she said, you need much more than love to stay married. And she was married for 40 years. So I think she knew what she was talking about. She was in a good marriage that she actually loved her husband for 40 years.
Is it tolerance that you need?
There's tolerance,
yes.
There's patience. And
lots of patience.
Yeah, big heap loads of patience. Absolutely. Not just for your partner, but for yourself.
For yourself, yeah.
Because our relationships and marriages are a huge reflection on what is going on with us internally.
Yes.
Right? They are actually our mirror to all the crap that's going on inside. all of our relationships are like that, but marriage in particular really, really highlights that for us. You know, it's really interesting. I've learned so much about myself by being married through my marriage.
Okay.
Right? That I don't know if I would have actually discovered all of that or experienced all of that if I was a single woman.
Okay.
Because when you're single, and this is not to knock people who are single, because sometimes you're single by choice versus someone who just hasn't found the right partner that they want to share their life with, for example.
Or
right?
they've met somebody who's just probably not good for them.
Right. So there's all sorts of reasons why someone can be single. I'm not knocking any of that. But I do think that there's a level of self-reflection that maybe you aren't stretched to if you are all by yourself. Because it's easy to live in an echo chamber. It's easy for you to just push something aside when you're single. When you're in a relationship, you have to face it.
You do.
It's in your face.
There are some relationships where people don't face it with each other. True. And really and truly, that's the stats that came out where 75% of marriages that fail are because of that lack of commitment. So it is the lack of commitment of sitting together and focusing on solving the issues that you have. You know, I always say like a marriage is a work in progress, a WIP. It's constant work and it's always progressing, hopefully. Right. And then when it fails, and if you decide like, hey, this is enough for me, I gotta go. I gotta go. Like I'm out the door, or you're out the door. If that's the decision that you make, it's because of that lack of all those things that kind of comprise a marriage. Right.
So amazing that you brought up that whole point about work in progress, because we're also, as individuals, always a work in progress.
Right.
So that's why you have to continually come back and work on things with your partner, because you're constantly changing and so are they.
Right.
And you always have to kind of check in to say, are we still moving in the direction that we both want to move in? There are going to be goals that you will have as couples.
Right.
That are wonderful and that will be separate from goals that you have as an individuals. I truly believe that you can have both. Like, I'm someone who thinks, yes, you can have it all. Maybe you can't have it all at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
But you can over your lifespan, you can have it all.
Yes.
Right? Maybe that's just me, Pollyanna, thinking that, yes, of course, you can do it all. You can have it all.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are steps and there are times in your life where, certain things become important.
Right.
And then other times when it shifts. And like we were talking about, I think in one of our previous shows, as long as you have two people who are both committed
and willing
to actually be committed to the relationship, you're going to be able to get through pretty much 99% of whatever's thrown your way.
Absolutely.
If you have one person who's lagging, but the other person's making up for it, you can still do that. It's when both of you are sort of on that low point where you're both not committed, you're both feeling, that you don't have the resource to move forward together. That's when you see marital breakdown.
Yes.
And a big part of that is your ability to communicate. Don't you think?
I think
communication
it's
is key.
I mean, when you look at the top 7 reasons why marriages last, number 1 is trust, right? So you have to trust your partner. Communication, which you just mentioned, like being able to actually speak to your partner and say, this is what's bugging me about you today. I really need you to move those socks and those underwears out of the way. Respect, like if your husband or your partner respects you and the words that you're saying, then he will do the things that he needs to do to make sure that you're happy. Love, definitely love. Laughter, like being able to laugh with your partner and enjoy and have good times. Passion, and last but not least, intimacy. So intimacy is a very important part of what keeps a marriage together.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, from my perspective, I mean, I have a different story. Like my parents were arranged marriage. I am East Indian background. So, when I look back at how marriage is viewed in my culture and the way that I was raised is, if you're married, you stay with your husband no matter what. Like there's no going anywhere. If you were to separate from your husband, that's considered shameful. And I don't share in that perspective because I was raised in the Western world, right? So I was, always thinking to myself, like, I have to be happy. I have to be happy. Like, it's just happiness, happiness, happiness. I myself wasn't married to my husband when we had children. So it took a while for me to get to the point where I was like, marriage is just a piece of paper. I know my parents want it, but and I have to because this is what we do in our culture. But I had to make that decision for myself. And when we finally did get married, it changed everything for us.
Ooh, tell me, how did it change things for you guys? What's the shift there?
We were together for a while, had children, and it wasn't great. Like, we had a lot of issues. Once we got married, it was kind of like it lit something in the both of us. It was like, it's like that ring, or that symbol of a ring on your finger is infinity. Like, you're just together forever, right? So as soon as we got married, it was like the passion and the romance and everything came back again. After 7 years of being together, we finally did it. And it was, and not to say that it's been perfect, but there was something inside both of us that got sparked. It was like a fire that got lit, something that moved us forward together. It was like we were no longer just one person. It was the both of us together.
I love that. So that brings me to the point, kind of circling back to me saying love is not enough. Mm-hmm. I think that the number one thing is commitment. Commitment trumps love. Commitment will trump pretty much everything, because at the end of the day, if you're committed to something, you're going to always move towards that thing.
Right.
Now, you've probably seen this in terms of your health. So if you are committed to health, you will get up and go to the gym even when you don't feel like it.
Right.
You will choose better stuff to put into your body versus junk food.
Absolutely.
Right? Because your commitment
level
is to health.
Right. But that's the thing. Both partners have to be in it, committed to make those improvements together. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult. And I know that a lot of women experience this. In my conversations with them, like, I sell houses. So I sell houses that are, women who are getting divorced from their husbands. And it's tragic. It's very painful. It's usually there's conflict that arises between husband and wife, and it's not pretty. So not only are you dividing your life and your assets and your money, you're also, there's children involved. There's a whole heap of things that are involved in divorce. It's not nice.
It's
right?
not pretty. I can definitely attest to that.
Yeah. So when I speak to them, we talk about commitment. We talk about the relationship between the partners, and usually it's one way or another where one partner has just given up. Like, they're not in it to fix all those things. People are not seeing eye to eye. They're angry. They're holding on to a lot of anger. They're triggered by everything that the partner says, and then they're out for blood.
Yeah.
After that, it's out for blood.
Yeah.
So, the thing is that even though that's the case, many people, and it's actually a stat that many people who actually go through a divorce don't actually give up on the institution of marriage. So that tells us that people actually do believe in marriage.
Well, they desire it.
They do. They desire it.
Yeah.
They desire that one partner that they're going to spend the rest of their life with. So a total of 64% of men and 52% of women get married again after their marriage is ended. But second marriages fail more.
Second marriages
right?
have a much higher percentage
higher chance
of
failure.
divorce.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from the fact that people actually desire having that. They
Yes.
want
People want
long-term
one
partners.
partner.
They
Yeah.
want that sort of safety and security and knowing that person can't just leave on a
Right.
whim.
Exactly.
The stats that I found actually support that in terms of overall health and happiness. Married men versus single men, the split is about 64% of married men report being very happy, as opposed to maybe 40% of single men. Same thing with women. The stats are a little bit lower, but still, married women report being very happy as opposed to their single counterparts, maybe about 53% to 40%. So marriage does provide both parties with some stability and a container where they can actually explore who they are. That's just my thinking around it. But the data does support that you generally are happier, you're
When
healthier.
you're with somebody.
Yep, and you live longer
live longer.
It actually has a physical effect on you.
So what do you think is going to change all of this? I mean, we're starting to see a decline in marriages. We're starting to see women kind of shift away from, trying to envision that for themselves. Obviously, we're seeing families, dissipate, like nuclear families, right? What do you think will change that?
Honestly, I think if I could say something that would change it, I don't know if it will actually happen, is social media. And technology. I think if people disengaged a little more and started learning how to cultivate actual relationships and communicate,
yes,
they would find that their lives would dramatically change. One of the things that I talk about with some of my clients is how to communicate. And so oftentimes, what did we learn how to do? If you're angry, you just start yelling at the person, calling them names, whatever. Like, people fight dirty.
Of course, yeah.
They fight dirty. Like, this is the reality of when you're behind closed doors. There are some mean things that people say to each other and things that you can't take back. And we don't generally have the wherewithal and the emotional resilience and intelligence to be able to hold ourselves in this space of like, okay, I'm just going to be calm and like calmly talk to this person. No. Like,
no.
you don't,
you're
right?
Out for blood.
Yeah. When you're emotional,
yes.
you can't control that. But one of the things that you can learn how to do is nonviolent communication. And there's a great book by Marshall Rosenberg, PhD, called Nonviolent Communication. And he outlines a 4-step process where you can learn how to communicate in a way where the other person can actually listen and respond to you. Because oftentimes we just fly off the handle, we say some mean things, we blame the other person, like everything is about the other person and what they've done, and you're making me feel this way. And all of this blame nothing gets done with that. And so if you are someone who actually learns the skills of emotional intelligence and learns how to take responsibility in those moments, even if it's a little bit of responsibility, it will definitely go a long way in terms of how you can communicate with the other person. So I'll give you an example. So this week, and this works with anything. It's not just your partner. It's your kids, your girlfriends, your family.
Okay.
So this week with my 16-year-old, I noticed that she was really quiet all week. Not normal in terms of I drive her to school every day, pick her up, we do our stuff, we do our Ubering at night. And typically she has something to say to me. This week was literally grunts and yeah.
Sounds like a 16-year-old.
It does.
Right.
From her to me, it was kind of like, what's going on? So I kind of let it go for a couple of days because I'm not someone who's going to just jump on the first thing that happens. Sometimes you're having a bad day.
Right.
By day 2 and 3, I was like, something's up with her, and I just need to figure out if it's something to do with me that she's not comfortable talking about, or did something happen in her life? So like any new mom, millennial kind of mom, I texted her and I said, hey, so we had an incident where there was a miscommunication between the two of us, and I picked her up. I was way too early to pick her up for something, and I was mad. I thought she was coming out at a certain time. I was sitting there waiting, and I'm like, what is this kid doing? Forever, for like an hour. Anyway, so I was really pissed when she got in the car, and I didn't say anything, and I was just sitting with myself saying, okay, I need to have a conversation about this with her when I can actually have a decent conversation.
Right.
And not just fly off the handle, because I don't know. And so, I mean, at the end, the truth of the matter is I was in the wrong. I didn't read the schedule properly. So she was totally fine. I was vexed and I was ready to tear her head off. And then I thought to myself, let me look again. And sure enough, it was there. I didn't see it. I didn't read it. So I took responsibility for that because she knew I was really, really vexed and she didn't kind of get why. Anyway, so the communication went something like this. First step is observing. And these are the 4 steps in the book. And so an example of that from my communication was, hey, I noticed, so I texted her, hey, I noticed you've been really quiet this week. I don't know if something's going on with you or if it's just one of those weeks when you're just kind of reflecting or whatever. But I noticed the behavior, right? This is what I observed. And I said, I noticed you've been quiet this week and I noticed you've been kind of short with me. Second step, after that, I told her how I felt.
Okay.
So my next thing is, I feel like we're not connecting this week. I feel like you might be upset with me. I don't know if that's true, right? And then I told her what I needed. And I literally said, I need to have better communication with you so that these things don't happen, so that we can check in with each other, so that I know what's going on, so that I'm not upset for no good reason. And then the last thing was a request. Can you please let me know and check that schedule and give me a heads up when something changes in your life or when something's going on? So it was that 4 things. I observed something. These are my feelings around it. This is my request, right? And so this is what I need from you, and then this is my request of you. And so when you break it down for people that way,
Right.
they're not attacked anymore. It's not about you're a bad person. It becomes, hey, I noticed you did this. Am I even interpreting you correctly?
Right.
Because oftentimes we'll see someone acting a certain way or not talking to us or whatever, and
we're
immediately
perceiving it the wrong way.
We're perceiving it as the wrong way.
Right.
We have a judgment immediately. We're like, oh, it's about that. They're mad at me about this. Well, you know what? And then we start making all these stories in our head about, well, this is how I'm going to defend myself, and you get angry and da-da-da-da. And at the end of the day, it could be completely different.
Yes.
And we often use anger as that bully, that mask to
get our point across.
To get our point across, but we're masking pain. Mm-hmm. The underlying issue is that you're hurt.
Right.
You're feeling fear. You're in an upset, and you're feeling vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And so we often use anger to be like, I'm going to blast the other person and because I need to get it out somehow. But really, we're not looking at how it's affecting us. And so we need to be able to present that to people. So all that to say, in your marriage, you can use the same strategy, right? But you have to learn that skill before you get to level 10 anger. You have to practice
I need
that.
to learn this, in other words.
But you practice it with the little things like this.
Little things like this.
I practice it with the little things, like with my kids, with someone at work. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go through those steps when it doesn't mean a lot.
Right.
When it's a small thing.
But I think we've kind of like become a defensive society, right? Like we're always on the defense of whatever's happening to us, and we're also getting triggered, and this happened, and that girl did this, and this happened. Like I feel like everything that we've evolved to as a society, we almost have to always put our blockers up and protect ourselves. So we act like that in multiple relationships and with our partners, right?
True.
So when you were talking about, I guess, how we've evolved, I was kind of segueing to in our personal conversation about how, like, when we were young, we used to play outside, right? Mm-hmm. And when you mentioned social media, I think about how our children are, just attached, and it's our fault. I mean, at the end of the day, we have them with their phones. They have their television, they have their iPads, they have their friends that they communicate with, and there's very little to no communication or interaction in person anymore. Everything's quick responses and text messages and Snapchat and TikTok and all these little small tidbits of information, because our attention spans have just decreased.
Huge.
So
absolutely.
Having the attention span with your partner is very important. Taking the time to say, you know what, I'm going to take this time to fix our relationship. I'm going to take this time to work on the things that I need to work on. So going back to that interaction with your partner.
Absolutely. You can start with small things. Right. Like no phones at a meal.
Yes.
Put the phones away when you have dinner.
Away.
Even if it's just the two of you. Like, I know a lot of people have very, very busy lives. They're in and out of the house. Mm-hmm. I'm a house like that, right? Yeah. So I have kids my kids start their activities, their evening activities at different times. But right after school, even if it's 3:30 in the afternoon, I have dinner with them. Whoever's there and who's in the house, I invite them down. Food always works, right? You put a little bit of spread out, and I say, guys, let's eat. Right? So even though they have their phones there, I will ask them individual questions. And I'll say sometimes, hey, you're really distracted. Can you just put that away for 5 minutes? I want to sit and chat with you.
Yeah, that's
and I'll
great.
just ask them.
Yeah.
And they're very good about it. They're like, oh, yeah, okay. They'll just put it away. And then, my 13-year-old might be like, yeah. But that's okay. I get some eye contact.
Right.
I get to talk to him. Right. And it's the same thing with my husband. Like he's, like I said, on one of our previous ones, he's on that phone.
My husband's on the phone all the time,
Yes.
watching videos after videos after videos, YouTube this, like.
He's very visual. I don't know if your husband's like my husband is very visual.
But he just goes down the rabbit hole. Like if there's like something that he wants to learn, like building a set or doing stuff like interesting, he'll watch like 1,000 videos on it. And then that will elapse into time that he could be helping me with the dishes, cleaning up, you know what I mean? So then there's conflict that arises from that because of the phone, because of the internet, because of all these things that just take our attention away from what really matters. So I think the messaging I'd like to get across today is, yes, I think marriage is worth it. I think that we should spend more time with our partners individually, intimacy, that quality time, actually be present. You know what I mean? Put those phones away.
Find the things that you guys like to do together, even if it's just one activity.
Just one activity.
Something you can do together.
But as a society as a whole, we have some work to do to bring our children in the next generation into a world where we actually learn how to interact with the other, you know, the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever. Learn how to interact with one another, okay? Learn how to spend time with another person and actually bond, communicate, develop that trust and that respect. You know, we need to be able to do that because I saw a vision of what our children are going to be like in relationships in 20 to 25 years. And all of them have headsets on.
Oh, God.
Virtual reality on their phones. Like, you know, just not really even in each other's presence, but in like a virtual world taken over by AI. So if we can
curb that, oh my goodness,
If we can change that with just somebody who's listening today to try to work on your own family situation, your situation with your children and your partner to try to push this idea of marriage and togetherness and unity.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I wouldn't have stayed for 20 years with the same man if it wasn't worth it.
It always is.
Right?
Yes.
I never would have. So that says something. I think people really do want to have quality relationships and they want to have deep relationships and deep connections. We all need that in our life.
Yes.
And marriage is a beautiful way for you to have that with somebody. Yeah. So I guess it's worth it. I guess it is worth it. Even with the socks, even with the underwear, even with the... Even with the piled up dishes that you come home to, even with all of it's worth it. Yeah.
But yes, we do go through those motions, and there's always a way.
Love it.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Beautiful. And that's our show for today.
So don't forget to like and subscribe. Again, make sure that you can at least comment on something that actually helps with the algorithm. We would love for you to check us out on YouTube as well as Rumble, Instagram. We want to connect. So make sure to let us know what you think.